Alicia, would you do me a favor, turn on your microphone and just say something?
There. Is that working?
Ah, perfect. No, that's good. Okay,
Awesome.
so we're good. Okay. And you'll do the you'll do the stuff that you talked about, which I don't quite fully understand, but I'll leave it to you, right?
Oh, it was just like a little survey thing that people can
Yeah.
fill out, like what their takeaway from
Okay.
the event was. And then it was going to make a word cloud, like what words stand out to them throughout the webinar and if they have any feedback. So we can just put that in the report.
Okay. So it'll be a small group, but it's a good way to pilot that.
Yeah, it's my first time
Right?
using it. So it's
Okay.
maybe good to practice.
Today will be our test case. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and then I think if there's a chat function, yeah, I can just throw the link right here so people can click on it and then they should be able to access it.
Okay. There seems to be a chat. Yep. Okay. Okay. There's a chat and there's a Q&A set up.
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't know if you need it. And change your view more. Yep, I think everything's working.
Alrighty.
Okay. And the
I can
recording is
find that
happening.
link.
Good. Good. Okay. So we'll give it a few minutes to let people arrive and but I think the tech is all working, so we're good.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, thanks for everything. Like this is good stuff. So we'll be a small group, but it's a good test for lots of things, right?
Good
So
choice. Yes, definitely.
I have. Okay. I see some familiar names. Good. Okay. So I'm not leaving. I'm just moving off screen for a second. Okay, good. Let's make sure there's nobody. I see. Okay. Hello. Yeah, okay. I like that everybody has a little note saying their work hours are 8 to 5 automatically if they have a Teams account. It's quite funny. Okay. So we're at 8 o'clock. We'll give it a couple of minutes because people are starting to drift in. Um, and if any, we have two people with the moderation powers, which are me and Alicia. I bumped you up to presenter. You don't have to present, but if I lose the call for any reason, then it doesn't kill the call. You can still
Oh,
keep it. You can still keep it open, and then I can rejoin on the phone. I got the laptop working, but it's not working well. So
yeah. Okay, no problem.
yeah. So sorry, not asking you to do
That was
anything
like
else.
mine last week. I just got it fixed yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, this is my son's laptop, and as he says, it has a unique personality. So so yes. Okay, I'm just going to see if Avril is still planning to jump in.
It's not letting me post in the chat.
Okay. You, Hillary. No, can't get everybody on one screen. Okay. Great. April. Moving one more person up to presenter, and then we can get underway. So okay, so hello, welcome everybody. Both Pacific People's Partnership and Bishop's University affiliates. So what we're doing tonight for a little bit under an hour, I hope, is to do a sort of very informal soft launch of the online archive of the Pacific People's Partnership as it nears, well, as it's in its 50th anniversary year and nears the actual date of the anniversary, I believe. So I was just going to do a little bit about the history and show the archive. I was going to ask April Ingham, who's the longest serving executive director of the Pacific People's Partnership, to say a few words about the history as well. And then we can look at a few of the documents together and see what we come up with. So essentially what we're doing here is a project that's about storytelling. That was the goal, right? So the Pacific Peoples Partnership is founded in 1975. It has been doing impressive work ever since, and it is the only organization based in Canada that works in solidarity with Indigenous and other Pacific Islander peoples in the South Pacific Islands. So from Papua New Guinea across to Polynesia, so all of the islands of the South Pacific. And it's a really interesting story, and it's one of many interesting stories of citizen activism in Canada that's been going on that doesn't always get as much attention as the big, exciting political campaigns, one of which we're just getting into right now. But in many ways, the Canadian presence and contacts with Pacific Islanders is carried less by the government, which tends to lose interest from time to time, and more by a dedicated small group of people who have been working to build connections and sustain connections between Canada, what is now Canada, and the peoples of the islands of the Southern Pacific Ocean. So the project that we were trying to do here was to take a whole bunch of papers and boxes and so on that are stored in the vault at the Pacific Peoples Partnership office in Victoria on View Street downtown, and start digitizing them and describing them and using those documents to help to tell stories about the organization's history, and more importantly, the history of the people and the connections that the organization has helped to, again, build and sustain over what's now half a century. A lot of people have come and gone through it, and I'm not going to attempt to name everybody in the organization, nor would I even have the time to do that. It would take more than an hour probably to name everybody. But I will say that, so in 1975, the organization is started in a lawyer's office in Vancouver to work on sending support, financial support, and people-to-people support to island peoples. But it quickly moves to Victoria. Phil Esmond is hired as the first executive director, and there's a bit of an argument within the organization over simply sending aid versus building partnership and solidarity, again, between Canada and island peoples. And it's around, in particular, the issue of the nuclear free and independent Pacific movement, which is based again in Pacific Islands and is working to end nuclear testing and end militarization by the United States, France, and others in the South Pacific, and is trying to instead build a zone of peace, a zone of friendship between peoples, a zone where Pacific peoples decide their own destiny rather than having it decided for them by outsiders. The people who want to stand in solidarity with the nuclear-free and independent Pacific movement are the ones who have carried forward the organization for most of that 50 years. So directors such as Phil Esmond and Stuart Wolf and Randall Garrison and many others, Glenn Rayner, Rita Parikh, April Ingham, who joins us today, and who did this job for the longest time. We have the acting executive director right now is Mary Sovic, who's an amazing activist islander who's working with many others. But it's not just the directors who've been carrying the organization, it's the Victoria community and the Canadian community and the community of Canadians who cares about the islands. So that's kind of the history of the organization, and April may wish to add to that, and I'm sure will. The projects have been so diverse, and I want to show some of the documents from some of the projects today. But I should also say the usual thing, which is we started the digitizing project with the support of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada in 2020, with a partnership engage grant between Bishop's University and the Pacific Peoples Partnership. April was the PPP side on that. But we've been carrying it forward since then. The documents are all now digitized. They're all summarized. They're not all up online yet, some of them for privacy reasons, and some of them because this is an awfully time-consuming job, online archiving. And a lot of people have been working on this. and we've had a lot of support in this. And few of the people who worked on this are here today. So I see Ev Jutia is here. But we've had support working on this from Leah Ruta, from Sarah Khorshid, from Beatrice Morrison, from Lucy Joie, from Maud Demoui Girard, from a number of other people just helping to carry forward this work. So it's been, I guess, a labor of love. And I should also do my other acknowledgement, which is the support from the Department of Canadian Heritage for this and a number of other 50th anniversary events that are going on. So I will quickly do a share screen, and I hope it works. So if I go over here, not sharing it, am I? Back here. And share a new tab and share. Then site which has to memory and shows what is one of many, I think, representative pictures of people in motion doing work for Pacific Peoples Partnership. This photograph is in 2019 in Vancouver with some very impressive art and some very impressive dancing. The project is to discover, document, digitize, describe, and disseminate archival materials. And the main one that's been done so far is, again, Pacific Peoples Partnership. If this is a project that can be carried forward, then we'll use other organizations. And this runs on access to memory software, and it digitizes the records of the Pacific Peoples Partnership in part, at least. So we have our various images in this carousel, and we have a various series within that, some of which can show in a few minutes. But I should stop talking for a few minutes as well. So I can hit stop sharing. That's a quick look. But I wonder, having said a brief, it's the worst thing ever when a professor says I'll be brief, right? But having shared what I hope is a brief intro, I wonder if April, you'd like to say a few words as well.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Oh, it's good to see you.
It's so nice to see you, David, and it's really nice to be here with everyone that is attending from, it seems, possibly all over Canada. But I am joining you right now from Sauk Nation Traditional Territories on the Coast Salish Sea on the Pacific Ocean. So it's very appropriate that I would be sitting beside the ocean while I'm also, attending this really important soft launch. I'm super excited because Pacific Peoples Partnership has been dear to my heart even before I had the opportunity to come and work with this organization. I had heard about the transformational work that they were doing and bridging the Pacific by bringing Indigenous youth from Canada into the South Pacific for internships, for their incredible work on West Papua, and just so many things I had seen and heard about over the years. I knew that this was an organization I wanted to be part of. So in 2009, I had the chance to join the team, and I was able to stay on the team until just the end of 2021. It just, wow, where does the time go? So before me, though, came a long line of amazing volunteers and board members and executive directors and supporters. I mean, you can't keep an organization like this going for as long as we have 50 years. That's a tidy sum without having people that are standing behind the organization. And when I reflect back at the beginning of my tenure with Pacific Peoples Partnership, I was deeply inspired, and I was so inspired. And yes, we actually do have a vault, and inside that vault was these archives. And there was also some other materials laying around from our history beginning in 1975, and that included some incredible photographs as well. Like, for instance, one of the ones I had hanging in the office for the longest time was a picture of some local community members. I hadn't identified who they were, but they were holding up a flag that had been designed by Tsartlip elders. So those are Indigenous elders to the island here, Vancouver Island, and Tsartlip is their territory. And what they had designed was a flag that was meant to rise on top of the Peacemaker, which was a Greenpeace voyage. And so the idea with this voyage is that they would, disrupt militarization in the South Pacific. They were there to create awareness about the militarization and also to raise awareness about the importance of stopping nuclear testing. So it was pretty amazing to see that right from the start, the linking between Indigenous peoples of Canada and within the South Pacific was taking place. And, so that history inspired me deeply. I understood right away by seeing these archives that the deep connections and the stewardship by all those that came before, including people like Phil Esmond, who took a incredible array of photos throughout the Cold War period in the South Pacific that were, I don't even know how far you've dug into those materials, but I just knew, and from the stewardship of people like Margaret Argue and Alison Gardner and Elaine Mons, that, there was so much there. And it wasn't until, I had the opportunity to travel to the South Pacific a couple times and learn about the state of archives down there that I understood how precious what we had was. Because within our Toc Blanc Pacifics, for instance, we had submissions from some significant leaders from across the South Pacific, many of whom may have passed, unfortunately. But we had these incredible, archives of their stories, of their videos, of their photos. And, those are precious to people in the South Pacific that may not have access to those kind of same paper records that we had. Many of you may know. Hi. Okay. Many of you may know that in the South Pacific, the maintenance of paper records is a real challenge because of the humidity and because of predominantly the humidity. So having the archives that we have made available publicly here in North America, throughout the Pacific and globally, I assume, is an invaluable resource for researchers. And that was also the other area that really inspired us to really hold on to the treasures that we're hiding in our archives, was the fact that we were getting calls from researchers. They wanted to have access. They were wondering about, programs that had been done in the 80s, like Masimari, or, or to find out more about our historical work in Timor-Leste. So we had a treasure. And it wouldn't have been possible to bring it to the forefront and make it, available publicly without the help of who at that time was my right hand, which was Andy, who I couldn't keep busy enough as a volunteer. So I put him right on the task of starting to archive and starting to digitize. And then, of course, with the support of David, taking it that next level so that we could access the funding so that it could become a proper archive. So I'm beyond excited. This is a dream come true, not just because it shows some of my old history, which maybe I don't want to see, but most importantly, it's because of what it offers to the peoples of the South Pacific and Indigenous peoples in Canada, as well as researchers and those that care about activism and about being connected. And also in celebrating, uplifting, and understanding history. So I thank you very much for indulging me, and I'm really thrilled to be here. I love this organization, and I'm thrilled that so many of you that are here today were part of bringing this archive to life. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, April. And yeah, April has mentioned Andy Nystrom, who is the on-site archivist who has been working tirelessly in the PPP office in downtown Victoria for a long time, and wasn't able to join us today, but I understand the weather's nice, so I hope he's having a good time. and was really crucial to this. And there's a number of other people. It's just too numerous to mention. My original plan was that I was going to try to put people into breakout rooms and share some documents in each room, but unfortunately, the technology is not my friend this evening, and the breakout rooms option is not happening. So I'm just going to have to do that, sort of put them up, and if people have questions or thoughts about them when we put the documents up, then please feel free to say something about them. So the organization's based in Victoria, right? And it's been really rooted in that community and in the Indigenous communities around, again, as we've heard, and in forging connection between Indigenous peoples here and Indigenous peoples in the South Pacific. But I mean, what's another thing that's great about it is not just one town that has this organization in it, right? This is people coming from across. So, you know, I didn't start with the land acknowledgement, but I probably should have. So thank you for that. So I'm currently in Montreal on the territory of the Haudenosaunee people, in particular the Mohawk, the Kanien'kehá:ka. And like a few others here, I live and work on Abenaki territory in Sherbrooke, Quebec, where Bishop's University is located. And I've just finished accompanying a Mohawk water protector who was visiting the university for the past 3 days. And I still kind of, that's where my head is at still, is hearing that thought. But at the same time, I'm thinking about the water protection is so much of a tie to what the Pacific Peoples Partnership does, not as an environmental organization as such, but also as an organization that talks about human rights and solidarity between peoples. And this is why the organization formed as the South Pacific Peoples Partnership, South Pacific Peoples Foundation, decided to change its name to the Pacific Peoples Partnership, because they say, well, what are we really about? There's this sense of partnership between people here and people in the Pacific Islands, and that's what you can kind of see at the core of the organization, but what you can also trace through the history of the organization. And as a historian, of course, that's what fascinates me. So why don't I show you a few documents that we've put up, and that I would they're dry documents out of a vault, but at the same time, they're the blocks of creating story. And that's one of the things that I hope we can do some of during the 50th anniversary, is take these frozen in paper and then in bits online, and turn them into story about activism, and a story about what's worked and what one organization in Canada has done over half a century, as an example of just partnership in action and activism in action. Can I say that? But it is. So if I look at this, we organized this with Fall Pacific Peoples Partnership, and there's a whole bunch of series. Some of them are rather dry, and the finances are not the most exciting thing, but many of them talk about campaigns, humanitarian and advocacy projects that were carried on by the organization over a period of time. And so, Papua New Guinea projects, kitchens in Tonga. I can keep hitting more and more and more over and over again, but I'm not going to right now. Instead, I'm going to say what these have done is they've been digitized and then they've been described. So this is document September 1983. You all remember 1983, of course. Digitized document, 4 pages long, and it gives a little bit of a summary of what happened. So this project was the first large-scale disaster rehabilitation in a group of islands in Tonga, and the project has shown groups what can happen if they're willing to work to improve their own living conditions and help strengthen and expand village development groups. So if I was to click on that, I'd see the whole document, project report. When you're doing fundraising, this would be so much more effective if I remembered to share the screen again, but I forgot. So I'm going to share the entire screen, I hope. Okay, so I believe I'm sharing the final project report. South Pacific People's Foundation of Canada, 620 View Street, Victoria, BC. It's not the same, it's the exact same office within that space, but it's not too far away, right? So here's the report. What did they say they would do in the original proposal to the Canadian International Development Agency, which is the government of Canada's funding agency for development cooperation projects from 1968 until very recently. It's now been folded into Global Affairs Canada. But they talk about their objectives. They said, yes, financial assistance was provided to the village level to allow them to proceed with reconstruction in a timely fashion. This was Pacific People's Partnership's first overseas project that involved government funding. So it serves as an example, right? There'd been a natural disaster, and the Pacific People's Partnership, or SPPF as it then was, says we're gonna try to provide assistance to a very remote and hard-hit area of Tonga. And the report here is it was done successfully. Objective partially met. Sanitation, we haven't got quite done all we wanted to, but we've tried. On the other hand, more kitchens were built than planned. Some of the difficulties encountered, they talk about it. Lumber was not cut, etc. But then this is the first large-scale disaster rehabilitation project in the Ha'apai grouping of islands. Part of the very real success of this project is that it's been able to get materials and assistance to some very remote areas in Tonga, areas which are traditionally very slow in receiving assistance because of their remoteness. As well, this project is the first concrete outside assistance that this village and enthusiasm of the groups to strengthen them, to also increase the families joining the groups. Rather than going through this whole document, let me come back on. Let's say, so a hurricane hit this island, these islands, right? Huge natural disaster, great destruction, including, of course, of dwellings, of places people lived and places people worked, and of the livelihoods of people in these islands. A lot of organizations went in and started pouring concrete and building houses. The people from the Pacific People's Partnership went in and they started talking to people. And they started talking in particular to women in the islands. This is a story from a whole bunch of documents strung together. That's one of them. And the woman said, okay, this is great. Houses are being rebuilt. We're very happy about that. But what about the kitchens, which is not only where we prepare food in a separate building, but it's also where women are able to get together and network and be in a safe space together and just talk and connect. Nobody's doing that. And those organizations that are doing reconstruction work are bringing in materials from outside, and they're saying just doing it for us. We want to be able to do it for ourselves with local materials. I want to do it in a way that centers women's perspectives. And the Pacific People's Partnership says, yeah, that's something we want to support. And that was the first overseas, if you want to call it a development aid project that the organization did. And I think it kind of sets the tone, right? So you can tell a story out of this document about an organization that's interested in women's empowerment before many people are talking about it, that's interested in listening and in partnership, even though it's not yet called the Pacific People's Partnership, but is still South Pacific People's Foundation, and is interested in finding ways to get relatively small amounts of financing in to remote areas of the islands in ways that will actually affect local people's lives, and wants to do it using local materials. I mean, that's doing aid in a different way than anybody else was doing it there at the time. So that to me says, okay, this is an interesting way of acting, right? And you just get it from reading the documents. So I thought, okay, this is kind of an interesting story to tell. So that's one of the first ones that we kind of got into when we were looking into this, right? Where did the organization start? And so on. Now, there's an organization that's worked in many, many countries, but I'm going to continue to use this one country as an example, okay? with, go back to a share again, I hope. Okay. I do not want to share a PowerPoint. Do want to share. Let's do this one. Fast forward a few years, right? Reconstruction happens. Okay, so here's a letter from Phil Esmond, who's the executive director at the time of the Pacific Peoples Partnership, a copy to Jim Boudelier, who was then the president, so chairing the board, and is still the president emeritus of the organization. Attached as a project in Tonga, Esmond writes to potential supporter. It's a project I mentioned to you on the phone. It's a well-documented and clear project to assist in the construction of water tanks in the remote islands of northern Tonga. I believe it's worthy of support, he says. I appreciate your comments and fundraising ideas. So I've been there. I have pictures. Pictures are worth many, many words. I've been to the Hapai group, same islands as 5 years earlier. And I have more slides of these islands, including slides of the water system. Should you feel a talk with slides in your boardroom is an effective fundraiser, I'd be happy to do that. Cost of one water tank is going to be about $350. That's more back then than it is now, but it's not a vast amount. If we're successful in getting this, we can get the CEDA, the Canadian Government Agency, to match the funds, $3 for every $1, etc. Okay, it's a little bit later. It's still talking about water. It's still talking about human scale. It's still talking about the same group of islands. So the organization has stayed in the same place and sustained that connection rather than, as happens all too often in disaster relief, picking up and leaving afterwards, right? So here's an example of effectiveness in continuing to listen to local people and trying to continue to sustain those connections in ways that are still going to support people in the area, right? So it's not episodic activism, it's ongoing activism, right? It's sustained. So I found that quite interesting. And this is just one area, right? Right now, there's a partnership project being built with the current president of the organization, Muava, is working with, again, partners in Tonga to try to, again, work together, probably this time on Indigenous youth exchange programs, which is another area that this organization has done a lot of work. This is just one country, right? I'm talking a lot, I know, I'm sorry. Anybody got any questions about this one country? Hearing that. I'm clicking Q&A to see if there's anything I missed. Okay, nothing there. Okay, feel free to shout out. Let me show you one more document that I think tells an interesting story too. So this is Pacific Networking Conferences. So let's get out of the 1980s, even though that's an important period in the genesis of an organization that is trying to be about sustained connection, not about episodic, flying in, delivering aid, and flying out, but about actually connecting and listening. So do one more share here, if I can. Tremendous difficulties with my sharing today. This is the one I need. Okay. So starting in the 1990s, the PPP starts holding Pacific networking conferences at, for instance, tribal schools on Vancouver Island, locations like that. where the aim is to bring people from Pacific Islands and bring them together with Indigenous people and others here in Canada about connecting. I grabbed this almost at random, Pacific Networking Conference 2000. So we're coming quite a bit forward from the 1980s, but we're still more than 20 years in the past, right? So it's the midpoint of the organization's history. What are they holding workshops on? And when you look at something like this, what is an organization holding workshops about? It's a great way to see what is being talked about, what is on the organization's agenda, what's on the to-do list, right? So what are the workshops about? There were six smaller workshop streams held at this Pacific Networking Conference 25 years ago. It was an annual event, but here's the themes, right? So number one, resource management, environmental stewardship, and traditional knowledge. There are some familiar names to some on some of these as the presenters, right? So Titika Matayapo is a very prominent name in this field, for instance. Traditional medicine and modern health, something I was also hearing about today at the university. The contribution of traditional medicines and traditional healings to healthcare in today's world, the role of Indigenous science in Western medicine, and so on. It's an area that nobody was talking about at the time, but it's the cover story on PPP's magazine, Talk Belong Pacific, News from the Pacific, to loosely put it in a more English form. Traditional knowledge and community economic development. So how is Indigenous knowledge playing into ideas of economic development of communities? So there's a Mohawk name from the part of the world I'm in right now, for instance. Cultural stewardship and continuity in a changing world. So stewardship here. Martari Lavoa Hildalini, very prominent name as a campaigner in Vanuatu, country that gained its independence in 1980, and also the auntie of our current executive director in the organization. So there's a family connection there too, right? A number of other people, really interesting people, right? She presented also on the second set of workshops, Indigenous governance, the old ways and the new. When she's saying Indigenous governance, they're talking about Vanuatu, they're talking about Fiji, and they're comparing it with the Indigenous peoples of the island that they're on, which is Vancouver Island, right? Got some interesting artists happening here. If I went to the photos, they're not all digitized yet, but working on it. Women as stewards of culture and traditional knowledge. It's not just male elders. There's Margaret Argue's name. She was mentioned. Many other interesting people. Youth, culture, and traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge, Indigenous science, and spirituality. These are sort of on the agenda items. That's enough documents to share. But again, I look at this, and this from the point of view of 2000 in Canadian activist circles, these are not issues that are at the forefront. We're not talking about the dominant issues. We're talking about an organization that's being quite pioneering in the issues that it chooses to focus on in its Pacific Networking conferences, and that's bringing together Indigenous people from here and Indigenous peoples from Pacific Islands, again, to share common issues. And just the fact of bringing them together, as you trace that through the Pacific Networking Conference, seemed to be the way that by people talking together, they were able to come up with issues that were important to them and then create workshop streams. And I also put this up because it's the first networking conference I was able to attend. I didn't do a lot of activist work in 1983 or 1988, but I was able to attend this Pacific Networking Conference in 2000. Another of the participants at that conference has just joined the PPP board last week. So that sort of continuity is still there, and continuity, I think, is a key theme that the organization can talk about as well. But it's being pulled out from these documents, right? And leading to some conclusions about it. we have the early photographs digitized. Do we have all the photographs digitized? There are an awful lot. So no, we do not. But there are images that are important here, right? So my final share is this one. Tonga Kitchens one. I'm going to go back to the Tonga Kitchens again because we do have some images here that are interesting images about what's happening. And this is one of the nice things about the software is you can just slide through the carousel and decide what you want to see. If I went back to 83, this is perhaps the only organization doing relief in Tonga at the time that actually had mostly women in their photos. So the photos maybe are providing some more evidence for the same types of things. There are so many photos, and photos are they're a lot more work, and also a lot more work to find out what's going on. So I think one of the next steps is going to have to be crowdsourcing. Who's in this photo? Who are these people? What were they doing? And this is a chance where people can I think archiving is also a form of activism because it's a form of recovering stories and using successes and failures from the past to try to inform the future of an organization as it navigates on often choppy waters. So I think I finished the show and tell section. I don't know, April, do you want to add anything else in? Have I been fair? You haven't heard any of this before, right? So
No, that it's wonderful, and I just had a peek at everything, and it looks really great, and I really look forward to doing what you suggest, and really looking at this, and also like what you say about recovering stories to inform the future. I think that PPP has been on the cutting edge of a lot of things and basing it on relationship, so that's why you see continuity. We couldn't be everywhere and do everything. However, we always tried to maintain connections to the places and the peoples with where we'd had historic engagements. And so, for instance, one of our board members, Elaine Mons, who was on the board for 38 years, 38 years, yeah, can you imagine that? So she was a nurse, and she was doing some work in Papua New Guinea on the Sepik, and fell in love with the art, and that inspired her to start a gallery in Victoria that became world famous. And world famous not only because, it was an incredible art, but because she was one of the first people to actually recognize the artists that actually made this. So wasn't just tourist art. This was real, coming from real people and recognizing that. And then her lifelong commitment to making sure that, that the peoples of the Pacific had the benefit of support from friendly neighbors up north. So, and that was really transformational when you look at what you can do when you bring people up from Papua New Guinea that are fighting against mining, and give them a platform where they can actually exhibit their artwork in the Museum of Anthropology, and utilize that as a platform to talk about how their lives are going to change because of mining. And so PPP is still involved with these communities. And so I think that says a lot right there. I can't wait to see the rest of the archive as it unfolds. And so bravo to the entire team that made this happen.
okay. Bravo to the organization for the work, yeah. Okay. So anybody want to say or ask anything? Alicia has put up a survey link, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you want to say what it is?
Oh, it's just a survey link, and it has a word cloud in there as well. So if anybody has time, if they can click on the link, I put it in the chat, and they can fill that out. It shouldn't take too long.
Take too long, yeah, okay. Alicia was just started off as events coordinator with PPP, a couple of weeks ago, right? So hitting the ground running.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
David, I think you had a hand up from Andy.
Yeah. Oh, Andy's here. Yeah. Hi, Andy. Are you able to talk? No, I can't. Okay, let me fix that. The survey link is posted in the chat. And I need to go back to people again. I need to go to Andy, and I need to, there. Okay. Andy, how about now?
Oh, am I talking now? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are.
Wow, nice. Hi, April. Hi, David. I actually put my hand up at error. I was trying to find the react button to press the clapping hands. No, this is great. I'm overwhelmed at how awesome this is for us, for Pacific People's Partnership, and I'm looking forward to exploring it. Thanks. That was all, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There's a one in the chat here that's are there any significant or surprising discoveries that came up while putting the archives together? So the archives were together, but they needed to be organized and scanned. They were safe, which is always good. Too many organizations throw their papers away or put them through the shredder. And this is, of course, a historian's worst nightmare when an organization does that. This is an organization that kept everything, which is wonderful. And it required a little bit of what archivists in a very ugly term call weeding, which means removing duplicates and so on, right? But it's these were papers in pretty good order. What surprised me is that the organization had so many connections to other non-governmental organizations within Canada, and that it was willing to go beyond its geographical scope at times. So PPP worked in isolation for a while, but increasingly in its later history made more and more links with Canadian church groups, with the Canadian Council for International Cooperation, which I suppose I knew, but just a really wide network around campaigns. You know, the Pacific Campaign to Disarm the Seas was very prominent around 1990 for a few years and drew in a whole range of organizations from across Canada. And PPP is not just working in the islands of the South Pacific. So usually they say Pacific is Micronesia and Polynesia and Melanesia, and Melanesia sort of fades out to the north of Australia into Indonesia, which is not just a cultural area, but a country. But not only does the Pacific People's Partnership have a lot of activity, which I was aware of course, up in in the Indonesian province of West Papua, which is inhabited mainly historically by Melanesian people, but it also had a big operation in East Timor, which was seeking its independence from Indonesia. And PPP members were really prominent in the observer mission for a referendum in 1999 for East Timor, and actually formed the core of the Canadian Support Network. And a one-time executive director, Randall Garrison, who goes on to become a member of parliament, although he's not running for re-election, I believe, for Esquimalt, ends up as the coordinator of the non-governmental organization Observer Project there. And there's tremendous connections formed with some Canadian politicians, and that is a big contributor to changing Canada's position on this issue. So you see these unexpected quiet actions that seem to be going on in the background, but actually turn out to be really important. So that's my attempt to answer that one. Yeah, so survey link is posted. Okay, so.
May's got her hand
When-
up too. Mere, David has her hand up as well.
Mary has her hand up, and I will. There we are, Mary. Okay, let me. my workaround is to anyone who wants to speak, make them a presenter. But I don't think we're in danger of Zoom bombing tonight, right? So, hi, Mary. Are you able to speak?
Okay. Well, greetings. Hello, Louisville, everyone. I'm chiming in from the unceded territory of the Suquamish people here in Seattle, Washington, across the water from Seattle, on the island of Bainbridge Island. I am just very. I think for me, this whole thing is just a lot of learning. Even though I'm from the Pacific, I have some of the archives that I myself have been reading, and the wonderful job that Andy N, we call him, who's been wonderfully posting all this stuff up on Facebook and also other parts of our social media. One of the things that I noticed too is that, as you know, New Caledonia, Kanak New Caledonia, and as well as West Papua, two of the Melanesian islands or countries that are still struggling for independence. And some of the things that I have been getting some notes from a lot of researchers in that particular part of Melanesian region are very, very happy to be able to find some of the information that they don't even know. And I myself have been reading some of the stuff. I was just blown away. I thought, especially from my uncle, Father Walter, which I was just, I didn't even know that he was at this place and this was happening. Of course, I grew up during the time of independence, prior to that. But that's to me what PPP is doing. And again, I want to kind of emphasize on the fact, like I think April had said, that a lot of this information, if we write them down on paper, they don't last. And that is a very, very important thing to remember, that the informations that you gather are stories, but they also preserve the memories of today's generations. Because a lot of our young people today don't know about our independence struggles or any of the events that happened in the past. So they're very important to keep and to also, in a way, to allow them to tell the stories of their ancestors or things that have been done, so that they can find themselves in this time in history that we are in, with so many information overload, that a lot of time we miss those little stories that help us to really find ourselves. So thank you so much, and I'm very proud to be part of this organization and to be able to allow our Pacifica and our Indigenous people in Canada to see their stories and be proud of who they are. So thank you so much, David. April, thank you so much for a wonderful idea that you'd be able to bring all this to the front. And lastly, to also say that because of climate change, we're not able to preserve our information very well, particularly. A friend of mine had asked me the other day to send some pictures of me when I was little for a documentary, and I said, I'm sorry, all those pictures have been lost because there's so many cyclones that have come and go, and we don't have those anymore. And so it is a very sad thing. And so to have the other side of the world being able to preserve those stories for us, it's truly important. And thank you also for recognizing some of the information that cannot be shared, which are culturally very sensitive. So thank you so much for that too. And I am learning a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. This is one of the documents on the independence movement in New Caledonia, or Kanaki, from one Kanak activist, that was published in PPP's magazine Talk Long Pacific. And the photo reproduction quality is not great, but it will get better. And shows that that issue that was in the news recently is not a new one for Pacific People's Partnership either, right? So I think maybe we can get something by going back. And yeah, this is one problem that archivists don't think about in North America, is the issue of preservation. I'm not going to say that digitization is a godsend and that it solves everything, because it doesn't. But I am going to say it's a good means of accessibility and helping to preserve and share this information with Pacific Islanders is a big goal of what we're trying to do here, right? So, so I'm glad if that's coming across as useful in any way. Yeah, because it is a form of preserving and then giving back, right? That's again the goal that we're talking about. Is this is not for Canadians alone to read. This is for people to read about and rediscover some things about their own history that maybe can't be preserved in the same ways in all parts of the world. So, okay, so thank you. So, anyways, we call this a soft launch because this is not yet finished, but it's finished enough to start showing and sharing, and people can find things. Again, as Mary has said, we need to not share everything because it is not all things that can be shared, but there's a lot that can be, and I hope that it leads to some stories for the future. So we should end soon because I said we'd be under an hour. But Andy, you want to ask something else or say something else?
Just finding my buttons here. Hey,
Did you
thanks.
put your hand up by accident?
I did. No, this is I did it for real this time. I just
Okay.
want to let people know that we're having a social event on Friday evening in Victoria. If there anyone listening here from Victoria / Lekwungen territory in British Columbia, I'm hosting it at my wife's home in close to the center of Victoria. So if people are available, they can reach me, Andy Telfer at andytelfer.ca through my website or through my email address if you happen to have it. Some of you might. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
and it includes dinner.
Okay, yeah. So the organization is going to be doing support again. Vanuatu has been hit by a natural disaster, and again, if we go back to the first event, PPP is working right now on prioritizing support to particular projects in particular local areas in Vanuatu, which will be upcoming very soon, and more 50th anniversary events coming. So it's everything that we have to say. I don't know, Alicia, anything else you need to announce?
No,
Not yet.
just thanks for everyone that's doing the survey so far. It's looking great.
Excellent. Okay, so thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll call it a night or an afternoon, depending which half of the country you're in right now. But thanks, and there's lots more stories being written, and I hope that archiving will be contributing to them. Let's call it a night. Okay, thank you, everybody. Oh my gosh, Nikki, thank you so much for the use of the computer.